Letting go does not mean you become numb or cold or indifferent. It does not mean the heart stops feeling or the mind stops caring. It means something far more radical. You are no longer imprisoned by the outcome. You are no longer a slave to what happens after your effort. You no longer sell your peace for the illusion of control. This shift is quiet but seismic. Most people live in a kind of trance, believing that if they just try hard enough, worry deeply enough, obsess completely enough, they can make things go their way. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. Much of life is beyond our control. You can love perfectly and still be left. You can work tirelessly and still not be chosen. You can plan everything down to the smallest detail and still find chaos waiting at the doorstep. And so, detachment is not a failure to care. It is the courage to face life on its own terms. Picture a surgeon preparing for an operation that could decide a patient's future. If he lets the fear of failure possess him, his hand will tremble. If he plays mental games about what the headlines might read or how the family might react, he will freeze. But if he surrenders fully to the present moment, if he focuses only on the task before him step by step, breath by breath, then his hand steadies, not because the situation becomes less serious, but because he no longer fears what might happen after. This is the essence of clarity, when the mind is no longer clouded by what-ifs and imaginary judgments. It becomes sharp, pure, able to see clearly, act decisively, and move freely. Yet how many of us live this way? We are conditioned from early life to tie our worth to results. Did you win? Did you get the grade? Did they like you? These are the questions that fill our childhood, and they become the questions we whisper to ourselves as adults. We ask not, did I act from truth, but did I win approval? Not, did I give fully, but did I get what I wanted? The consequence of this conditioning is a life of quiet desperation. The world is full of one thing, living to get that which we want from life. Words also bring the same thing. We live to provide the past couple of days, and it's been, it's so fun. Did I get what I wanted? The consequence of this conditioning is a life of quiet desperation, an endless tightrope walk over a pit of anxiety. Because when your happiness depends on things you do not fully control, other people's opinions, external rewards, unpredictable outcomes, you will always live in fear. Fear of failure, fear of being overlooked, fear of being not enough. And fear is the enemy of depth. You cannot be fully present when you are terrified of the result. You cannot create beauty when you are only trying to impress. You cannot be vulnerable when you are only trying to impress. You cannot love honestly when you are afraid of rejection. There is, however, a deeper way, a way that begins not with striving but with surrender. When you begin to let go of outcome, not abandon action, but release the obsession with what comes after, you start to return to yourself. You begin to act from the center of your being, not from your hunger for reward or terror of failure. This is not apathy. And, when you begin to let go of outcome, honesty, you start to return to yourself. You begin to let go of outcome, honesty. You start to return to yourself. You begin to let go of outcome, honesty. It is alignment. Detachment in its highest form is devotion. It is to offer your effort like a sacred gift without demanding anything in return. It is to do the right thing not because you are promised success, but because it is right. It is to love fully, even when you are not sure it will be returned. It is to create art that no one may ever see, simply because your soul needs to create. Paradoxically, this is when life begins to flow, because now you are no longer grasping. And what we grasp for runs from us, but what we embody, what we radiate, draws its reflection. A study from the University of Zurich in 2015 observed this phenomenon from a psychological angle. Participants were asked to engage in high-pressure, creative, and analytical tasks. Those who practiced non-attachment to self and outcome, in other words, those who were involved in the process but not obsessed with the result, showed significantly better performance, less stress, and greater enjoyment. The more they let go of needing to succeed, the more they did. Why is this so? Because obsession creates tension, it narrows vision, it breeds panic. But detachment opens the field. It allows for play, spontaneity, and clarity. The detached mind is a spacious mind, and in that spaciousness, insight can land, intuition can speak, presence can flourish. There is a kind of magic that arises when you do something not because of what you'll get, but because of who you are. Think of the athlete who plays best when they forget the scoreboard, the speaker who captivates only when they stop trying to impress, the speaker who captivates only when they stop trying to impress, the person who finds love the moment they stop begging for it. These are not coincidences. They are signs that we thrive not when we control the outcome, but when we release it. To live this way requires a death of sorts, the death of the image you want to uphold, the death of the fantasy that you can micromanage life into perfection, the death of the ego's constant need to be rewarded. And this death is terrifying, but beyond it lies rebirth. Because when you let go of needing everything to turn out a certain way, you begin to discover that you were never here to manipulate reality into your preference. You were here to meet it, to dance with it, to shape it, not through force, but through truth. Letting go of outcome does not mean you give up ambition or stop dreaming. It means your dreams are no longer a prison. It means your ambition is rooted in joy, not fear. It means you no longer believe that your worth is on trial with every move you make. Instead, you begin to act as if your life is a piece of music, not to be controlled, but to be played with devotion. Some notes rise, some fall, but what matters is that you are fully inside it, not watching from a distance, not clenching for the applause. You play the harp, sink, and the whispers spread. It's a pleasure to be free, mind, spirit, heart, soul, and spirit, mind. Instead, you begin to act as if your life is a piece of music, not to be played with devotion. The fear of failure, the need to impress, the desperate hunger for approval. Pause. Return to the breath. Ask yourself not what will they think, but what is true for me? Not will I win, but am I fully here? Because the deeper truth is this: when you act from presence, when you let go of needing to win, you often do. Not always in the way you expected, but often in the way you needed. And even when you don't, you remain whole. And that wholeness, that grounded clarity, is the quiet miracle of letting go. The ego is a necessary illusion. It is the mask we wear to move through the world, the character we create to navigate the stage of society. It helps us speak, negotiate, survive. But the danger comes when we mistake the mask for the self. When we believe the voice that says, I must be more or I am nothing. The ego is driven by fear. It clings to titles, roles, beauty, intellect, success, because it is terrified of what lies beneath. It whispers that we are not enough as we are, that we must do more, earn more, impress more in order to deserve love or peace. But what the ego does not realize is that its desperate striving is the very thing that keeps us disconnected from our deepest power. There is within each of us a deeper truth, a quiet self that does not need to be admired, does not demand recognition, does not chase achievement. It simply exists, whole, rooted, present. This self cannot be found through ambition. It does not emerge through performance. It only reveals itself when we stop trying to become something and start remembering who we already are. This moment of remembering often comes not through victory, but through exhaustion. When the ego has tried every trick, run every race, manipulated every mask, and failed, something inside begins to crack. But that crack is not the end. It is the beginning of something real. There was once a woman who spent years trying to earn a promotion. She arrived early, she stayed late, she laughed at the boss's jokes, volunteered for every project, silenced her needs. She wore every costume she believed was required of her, perfect, pleasant, unthreatening, but still nothing came. She watched others rise. She smiled through the sting, and each day a piece of her became more hollow. Then one day, something inside her gave out, not in defeat, but in truth. She stopped pretending. She stopped performing. She stopped seeking to be the version of herself she thought they wanted. Instead, she began to speak with honesty. She shared her real ideas, not the safe ones. She said no when she meant no. She reclaimed her time, her voice, her presence. And something strange happened. She was seen, not as a cog in the machine, but as a presence. People began to listen. Her words carried weight. Within months, she received the promotion she had once chased so desperately. Not because she tried harder, but because she stopped betraying herself. The ego had failed, and in its failure, the authentic self had space to rise. This is not just her story. It is the story of countless souls who finally tire of the chase and begin to walk the path inward. Have you ever noticed that life seems to cooperate only when you stop trying to control it? That the moment you release your tight grip, the very thing you longed for begins to approach, slowly, as if it had been waiting for you to stop blocking its path. You stop texting them, and they finally reach out. You stop chasing the next idea, and inspiration suddenly pours in. You stop fighting for money, and somehow it begins to find its way to you. This phenomenon is not coincidence. It is not luck. It is the quiet law beneath the surface of all things. What we desperately try to grasp often slips away. But what we meet with openness has room to arrive. There is a hidden intelligence in the way the world moves. It does not respond well to force, to fear, or to frantic striving. Life is not a machine that obeys commands. It is a living, breathing current, and we are not its master. We are part of it. When you try to control everything, every outcome, every reaction, every twist of the journey, you become narrow. Your vision tightens. You miss signs. You block instincts. You cannot hear the subtle whisper beneath your thoughts. But when you release that need for control, when you surrender, not in weakness, but in trust, you widen again. You begin to see what you could not before. A kind of magic begins to move through the cracks you left open. That magic is what we call synchronicity. Not random coincidence, but a deep symbolic alignment between inner state and outer experience. When your inner world becomes clear, still, and truthful, your outer world begins to echo it in strange and beautiful ways. So if the right people appear, the right words are spoken, a book falls off the shelf with the very idea you were missing, a dream guides you to a decision you had not considered. This is not superstition, it is soul language. But this kind of harmony cannot happen while you are forcing, fearing, obsessing. The tighter you hold on, the less space life has to move. Think of it like dancing. If you try to lead every step, your partner can't move. If you were fierce when you said lead, you could not have given any lead. You could not have guided. So think of it like dancing. If you try to lead every step, your partner can't move. If you try to lead every step, your partner can't move. If you try to lead every step, your partner can't move. If you try to lead every step, your partner can't move. But if you listen to the music, if you follow the rhythm, if you trust the movement, something beautiful unfolds between us. This is how life works when you stop wrestling with it. And this truth has been studied even in the world of science. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, a great observer of human experience, described what he called the flow state, a place where action and awareness merge, where time seems to vanish, where the self disappears and the task becomes everything. In this state, people do not think about failure. They do not chase outcomes. They do not cling to fear. They are simply present. And in that presence, something incredible happens. Creativity flourishes, performance heightens, joy returns. They stop trying to control and they begin to co-create. Flow is the opposite of anxiety. It is not born from trying harder. It is born from allowing more. To reach it, you must let go of your need to dominate every outcome. To reach it, you must let go of your need to dominate every outcome. You must stop asking, will this work? And start asking, am I here? Because flow is not a place you arrive at by force. It is a state you enter when the ego dissolves. Letting go does not mean doing nothing. It means doing what you are called to do, but without the tight fist of fear. It means acting from clarity, not compulsion. It means showing up fully, but not needing to manipulate the result. There is a strength in this, a deep inner confidence that says, I will do what is mine to do, and then I will trust the rest. Many people misunderstand surrender. They think it means giving up, or being passive, or abandoning desire. But surrender is not the absence of will. It is the alignment of will with something deeper. It is recognizing that you are not separate from life, but part of its unfolding. That sometimes the most powerful action you can take is to stop pushing and start listening. Imagine a river. You can fight against the current, exhausting yourself in the name of control. Or you can learn to swim with it, to be carried, to steer gently as needed, but to let the flow support you. When you stop wrestling with the river, you begin to move with grace. And grace, in its truest form, is not something you earn. It is something you receive when you become open to it. So many of us live clenched, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We are taught that if we are not constantly worrying, planning, chasing, then we are failing. But what if the opposite were true? What if your peace, your ease, your soft openness was the very thing that allowed life to reach you? We are not meant to strangle our desires. We are meant to offer them and then release them into the greater intelligence that we are part of. Just as a farmer plants the seed and does not dig it up every day to check its growth, we must learn to trust the timing and rhythm of things beyond our sight. There is a moment in every journey when you must step back and allow, not out of laziness, but out of respect for yourself, for the process, for the unseen order that surrounds you. To release control is not to lose power. It is to step into a greater one, the power that moves through you when you are no longer blocking it with fear. This is where true transformation begins, not in the effort to dominate life, but in the humility to walk with it. When you stop demanding that everything go your way, you begin to see the ways it already is. When you stop grasping, you notice how much you already hold. When you stop chasing, you realize what's been quietly walking beside you all along. So alignment is not a trick or a strategy. It is a return to trust, a return to presence, a return to the river that was always there, waiting for you to stop fighting and start flowing. There is a moment, rare, quiet, often born of suffering, when you stop living your life through the mirror of others. When you stop bending your truth to fit their comfort, when the weight of performing, pleasing, and pretending finally breaks you open. And from that opening, something far more dangerous, far more holy begins to rise. You begin to speak, not to be liked, but because you have something to say. You begin to walk, not to be followed, but because you know where you're going. You begin to live, not to impress, but to be in alignment with your own soul. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. This is not rebellion, it is remembrance. This is not apathy, it is freedom. When you no longer care what others think, not because you're numb, but because you are rooted, you become unshakable. The crowd can cheer or condemn, and you will still walk the same path. You do not shrink when misunderstood, nor inflate when praised. You become steady, centered, alive. To reach this place is not easy. It requires death, the death of the false self, the one built from fragments of approval. We are taught early to conform, to fit, to earn love by being what others want. We edit ourselves to stay safe. We hide our fire to be accepted. We become a polished version of someone else's idea of good. But this safety is a cage. Slowly it starves the soul. And one day you look in the mirror and do not recognize the person staring back. You've gained the world, perhaps, the applause, the titles, the image, but you've lost yourself in the process. That is when the true journey begins, not of becoming more, but of unbecoming all that is not you. Peace, the kind that makes you powerful, is not found in obedience. It is found in integrity. It is the quiet that comes when you are no longer at war with your own nature. When you can walk into a room and no longer scan it for cues on how to behave. When you can sit with yourself without performing. When your yes means yes and your no is clean. This kind of peace changes everything. You stop settling. You stop apologizing for your existence. You stop tolerating environments, relationships, and roles that dim your light. You start walking away not with bitterness, but with clarity. You no longer beg for crumbs of validation. You remember you are the feast, and in this remembering, your presence becomes different. People feel it. They may not always like it, but they feel it. You become the person others go silent around, not out of fear, but because truth does not require noise. You become the one others turn to when they are ready to hear something real. You have become dangerous, not to others, but to the systems that profit from your silence. You threaten illusions by being yourself. You throw substance to the systems by making yourself. Think of Van Gogh, a man who painted for madness and beauty, misunderstood and mocked in his time. But he did not stop. He painted not for galleries, but for God, for soul, for the unbearable beauty inside him that needed to be seen. The world caught up with him far too late, but his truth endured. Think of Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp, stripped of everything but his inner life. He realized that even in the most brutal conditions, the one thing no one could take was his ability to choose his attitude, his meaning, his response. In that unbearable darkness, he found a light no one could dim. Think of Maya Angelou, whose voice was silenced by trauma, and who later roared so fiercely that generations would echo with her power. She did not write for applause. She wrote because truth demands to be spoken. And once she reclaimed her voice, she never gave it away again. These are not special people. They are reminders of what we all carry. The seed of authenticity, the fire of clarity, the calling to rise, not as copies, but as original souls. And that rising begins the moment we stop needing permission to be whole. Approval is a fragile currency. It changes with the wind. One day they adore you, the next day they forget your name. If your identity is built on their applause, your peace will always be rented, never owned. But truth is yours. It cannot be given. It cannot be revoked. It is what you were before they told you who to be. And once you reclaim it, you no longer barter your voice for acceptance. You no longer trade your values for belonging. You belong to yourself. And from that place, you finally have something real to offer. The irony is that the world begins to listen when you no longer need it to. Your words land differently. Your energy shifts. You stop persuading and start resonating. Because when you speak from truth, people recognize something ancient. They may not know why, but they feel safer around you. Not because you are always kind or pleasing, but because you are real. And this is what we are starving for in this age of noise. Not more perfection, but more presence. Not more performance, but more soul. Not more curated lives, but the courage to live unedited. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one claps? What would you still do if it failed? What would you still say if no one approved? Because that is the voice the world needs. That is the power that cannot be controlled. That is the life that will not be sold. When you stop caring whether the world approves of you, you are finally free to give it your truth. And that truth is not just for you, it is for those still trapped, still hiding, still pretending. Your courage becomes their permission. Your freedom becomes their path. And all of it begins with the simplest, most sacred choice to be yourself, fully, unapologetically, now